Hello artists, Mrs. Keitel here, back again. This time on May the 4th, we are channeling our Princess Leia this time. I am anyway. But we're going to be making one of the paper collage options. Now in the PowerPoint and the video that I posted yesterday onto the YouTube, which was titled May the 4th Be With You, My Artists, there were lots of ideas of things that you could make. Earlier today, we made toilet paper roll Yodas and a Darth Vader as well, which you could transform into so many other things. And then for this round, we're going to be doing some layered paper. So you could be using construction paper, regular paper, anything that you might have at home. For me, I honestly cannot find my construction paper anywhere. So we're going to be using the similar kind of paper that we used for the toilet paper rolls that we made. This time around though, I'm going to be cutting out a lot of larger shapes and thinking about going from bigger to smaller to compile the face on the image that we're making. So when I said face, I maybe wasn't as quite as accurate as you might be thinking. You might have been thinking of a different character, but today I'm going to be making BB8. So I looked through all the papers that I had left. And again, we're always thinking about how we can use what we have at home. And the main color that I had was this kind of grayish one. Now, I know BB8 is white and orange, but I'm using what I have. So I'm kind of thinking outside the box. I'm kind of switching up some colors, doing things a little bit differently. But these are all those painted papers that I had kind of showed in the previous video. So I'm using this image. I'm lucky to have a printer at home. I'm using this image as my reference. Now you could also Google something or just pull it up on a phone or a computer and be able to see just a visual to have, but I like to have a printed one right in front of me. That's just something I've always used. I'm not as always as technologically advanced as some of my students are, so that's why I like my paper in front of me. Now, what I'm going to be doing on the back is thinking about the shapes that BB8 needs. Now, BB8's body is going to be that nice, it's almost just a perfect circle. Now, he would be a sphere. He's three-dimensional, but we're creating something that's two-dimensional and flat. And then the top is also a half circle, a half sphere, with a little bit of that curve underneath. So I've started to draw that curve on the top. You're going to notice that when I draw things, I almost always use Sharpie. I typically do that in class too at school so that my students can see even better when I'm presenting. Now, even though I'm drawing in Sharpie, that does not mean that I always abide by those. So feel free when you're drawing or sketching to maybe get a little loose and get a little outside of the lines, because when it comes down to cutting or doing a final trace, you can always pick the lines that are most important to you or erase what you don't need. So I've got my top of my head done here. I'm going to think about that circular body now. I'm using a Sharpie again to draw. If you have a pencil or a pen, markers, crayons, anything that you might have at home. Now, I might have mentioned earlier that BB8 is a perfect circle. Your goal is to just make a nice large circle. Perfection is not what we're going for here. We are just doing our best. Once I have the body and the head drawn, I would like to cut them out. Again, I can go outside of my lines a little bit. So I want his body to be even a little bit bigger. So I'm really going outside the lines and showing you my colors here. So flipping it around to show you the lines, you can see the difference. Moving on to the head. I'm really going to divot down here. I noticed in my drawing that at the top, it really had, sorry friends, I'm going to get my reference better. It really had a space between here. It wasn't this kind of like flat line. It curved up nicely. So I'm going to cut my curve a little more at an angle than I drew my line. Now, once we get these cut out, you want to think about your background. If you have construction paper at home, you might just pick one plain color. For me, we're going to be using another piece of colored paper. This is actually a paper my son Henry created. He did an all blue background. This is acrylic, so it's nice and thick. It's had a week or so to dry, so it's completely dry and pretty hard, pretty sturdy. But he was making a stormtrooper. If you can see that white outline in there, you can see kind of his idea of that outside shape. So I'm going to be putting my BB8 on top of him. Now once I get my shapes cut out, you can already start to see the connections here. Now I'm going to be using tape again. We do not have glue that I can find at our house at the moment, and tape is a great alternative. It can also go in addition to tape. You might even use staples or a stapler if you have something like that at home. That's a great way to kind of connect these things and use what you have to make it work. So I'll be envisioning my BB8 going on top of here. Now it's time to think about some of the details. So I pre-cut a couple pieces of paper. I had all these painted papers, and before I started my video, I pre-cut down straight to the paint, so I didn't have all the excess paper. So for example, these ones here were some old prints as well. I will cut these down here in a second. Just wanted to save a little time for the video. Now once I got my choice decided for my back color, I then needed to find a somewhat contrasting color to go on top. So I went with this yellow leafy textury color that I created with some gel prints. For this, I folded it in half. Using symmetry and using one piece of paper to create an entire image or two sides of something is a really great trick when you're making things at home. So I wanted to make the circular design on BB8 right here. So I folded my paper in half. I drew my half circle and then the inside designs. I already can tell that this is going to turn out more like an oval than it will a circle. So I'm going to trim around, just make it a little more circular. And then I'm going to trim out the entire inside here, but I'm going to cut inside my lines because I want to have a little more of my color left and not so much white space. So again, you can make all the lines you want, and in the end, you decide which ones are most important to you. So once I cut it out, I now have this other shape. This actually looks kind of like an Under Armour symbol, but I have this other shape to use for later. And then I have my inside circle that I was creating for BB8's body. Pardon me while I pick up my paper. So now I can attach my center design. And on BB8, there are going to be 3 other edges of that exact same color that I need to create. So I'll hold onto this paper here and then just cut out a couple more. Again, I'm going to fold my paper in half. I'm going to let the paper do the work for me a little bit more. Kind of thinking smarter, not harder. Now once I cut this in half, I can see how it's going to fit onto my shape. And I could make it just a little bit smaller on both sides so that I can use it in 2 places. My son Seeley's joining me here for his dinner in a second. I'll show him off in just a minute or so. As I'm working along, I'm going to be taping things down. Now, if you are overlapping things, you can flip them over. As I did on my first 2 pieces, I overlapped them and I flipped them and taped. Otherwise, you can create what we call a little loop. And you can flip your tape over and connect it. Make that little circle, make that little loop. And then you can do that on the back. Now, if you're using painted paper like me, it's a little hard for that smooth paper to stick to our paint texture. But if you're just using any regular construction paper, it should work beautifully. So I'm going to do a little more taping here and show you where I'm at. And then I'm going to pause my video. When I'm pausing my video, I'm going to get a couple more things prepared to then show you my pieces. I'm going to pause it again, and then I'll get a couple more tapes done, and we'll see our final piece. All right, peeps, I'll be back in just a moment. All right, so I've gotten all my pieces cut out. We cut out and drew together the head and the body of BB8 and then also that original circle shape. Then I added on the other circular shapes around it, and we have also the silver details in the head, the eyes of BB8, some of the orange details, and then the silver on the inside. Now, I did not have all of these colors at home, so I used what I had. So you're going to notice on my BB8, Instead of silver, I have green. Instead of the orange, I have yellow. Instead of the white, it is that kind of tan light color. And then for my eyes, I have black, but instead of red, it's kind of this purple. So I've cut out each individual piece, and I'm going to now tape on from the biggest to the smallest to create my BB8. I'll reveal in just a moment. Alrighty, I have finished my version of BB8. Remember, I did not have all of his specific colors, so I used the papers that I had. Some of my papers ended up being cut very small, so the tape got a little difficult for me in some points, but if you have glue at home, that will help prevent any of those smaller pieces from being difficult to attach. I think they look pretty decent right next to each other. This is the last video I have for today, May the 4th. I hope everyone had a wonderful day. I've had so much fun sharing my Star Wars ideas with you all. May the 4th be with you all, and I will see you soon.